I'm looking in my mind, what is that greatness experience? It's not just how like it's hitting me as a food, how delicious it is, and how much is going on flavor wise. And it's as a winemaker, I clearly know when I taste something really spectacularly interesting and delicious and filled with a variety of flavors and seemingly something personal, I'm fully aware of the enormous effort of those people at that wine to do everything they've done to pull that off. It is so much work to pull off a great wine, put it in a bottle, and then do the other half, which is to get it around the world and sell it and get it to someone who cares.
Welcome, everybody, back to the Barrels and Roots podcast. I have an awesome guest with me today. Now, can you tell people who you are and a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, hi, Sean. I'm Keely Foster. I'm up here in Yakima Valley, Washington State. And I've been a career producer in wine in Washington. Made wine, worked overseas in New Zealand and South Africa. On my own company, I consult as well to wineries in Washington.
That's awesome. Like, when did wine stop being just something that you loved and become the job that you wanted to like go down in the path that you wanted to live?
Yeah, the moment I did my very first punch downs over a tiny little bin of wine in 1991. I came in Saturdays and there was just this little thing I was helping on doing sales, and there's a little tank to mix. And so I did that. And the first week it was grapes. The second week it was turning into wine. And the third week it was pretty much finished wine. And the fourth week was gone. And I was like, well, where'd it go? And I'll never see it's in a barrel. And I said, oh my God, that was cool. Can we do that again? I've been doing it ever since.
That's awesome. It kind of was like you got you hooked. And sometimes that's all it takes to get something there that you really love, you know? And wine is synonymous with certain regions. And talk to me about wine in the Washington area, in the Yakima Valley. What is it like to grow wine where you're growing wine right now?
Yeah, probably the thing that made it most clear what it was like to grow Washington wine was to go away and come back, first from New Zealand and then from South Africa. And then on the way back from South Africa, I remember writing in my winery newsletter at the time, I said, God, we are in a Eden here. And we barely have any bugs, and barely any mold. We've got clean, easy ground. We've got great weather. It's like, 300 days of sunshine. We've got irrigation. This is so easy. We've got it so easy. In fact, we should be making great wine. It's not like we are and we're lucky. No. We are having the struggles most of the world does. So what's it like? It's surprisingly easy. And I've been trying to point that out on my YouTube channel. And it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure because I have actually made wines in South Africa, made them in New Zealand with great producers, making very good wines. It could be a struggle to get through a modestly good vintage to achieve what you're seeking in those regions. And for us, it's a bit of a cakewalk. We're a little deceived when we're losing.
After 3 decades making wine in Washington, what still excites you when a new vintage begins? What's the thing that, like, you sit there and go, you know what, this is going to be an awesome year?
Yeah, it's always a personal thing for me. It's the personal experience of going into the world, the natural world, knowing, the only equivalency is it's kind of like surfing. I don't get to make the waves, but I get to pick the waves and ride the wave. Or wave is going to be what it's going to be. Vintage will become what it's going to become. I can't control the weather, but I get to decide how to ride that season. So there are so many things we can do with wine to craft it. And we're going to do that from the pruning all the way out. And then when the harvest is done, I know for sure precisely how good the wines are. And then it's my job to apply the recipe appropriately. So every time it's both the wonderful mystery of not really knowing what's coming in the letter, and then having to anticipate a season before, or definitely weeks before bud break, how to clean it properly. Don't know how dry the summer will be, so we really will have enough water. We might, but we're going to do that time. And so when we succeeded and we come to harvest, even though I've got a recipe, I've got to actually execute it. And I've got to be sensitive to the vintage. I mean, I'm making, what I consider to be vintage unique wines. So I've got to apply a meaningful recipe that fits and be sensitive to the exact sort of gut moments. Every time it's a creative event. Even though,
yeah.
So, but the creativity can only come after you part of science, right? It's in there more of a serious model. Why good science? Would give it to then really unleash your creativity.
See, that's beauty. It's like people don't realize that you have to, in life, in different skills, like once you get the basics down, you're able to learn to dance. But to start learning to dance, you have to know basic footwork. You got to be able to move here, move there. And if you don't have that, then the dancing doesn't happen. The art doesn't happen. But it is this balance between the two. But it's interesting because you've worked with so many regions and styles. What is it about the vintages that you're making now, or the wines that you're making now, that keep pulling you back?
I'm more and more interested in the microclimates, the expression of a certain part of Yakima Valley, or a certain oil series and the hillsides of the upper Yakima Valley. The way it expresses a different wine than the same grapes I had planted 100 miles away on the Luke Slope. They are different. And now I've moved, for instance, one white wine, a Semillon Sauvignon Blanc Muscadel blend that I made rather successfully, and just heaps of awards. Sorry to interrupt everybody, but this wine I made out of grapes in Columbia Valley. Spectacular wine. I loved it. Loved the wine. I actually think I'm going to be making a better wine. I feel very sure. I'm going to make a better version of this blend in the Ellensburg series in the upper Yakima Valley. It's cooler, different soil type. It's an ancient riverbed, more like Bordeaux. So the way I'm applying everything I've learned, and then, now that I know all this much, how can I improve it further? And to me, it's slight specificity of the exact grapes that I like for my style. And that's one big step forward. And now I'm going to try to expand that white wine style, this address at Boston State, and Diamondback Ridge up near the old vineyards that were planted in the early 80s that made some super classic wines.
That's awesome. But that leads me, because it's like, I'm so fascinated by the where things are grown, because you get you take two plants and you put them in different soil, and you're going to get two dramatically different, things coming up, and tastes and flavors, and it's like, I live in Vietnam part-time and live in California part-time. And one of the things is I could take tomato seeds and plant them at both places in both soils. They will taste dramatically different because of the sun, the temperature, the all of that, They're both going to be delicious, but, there's such a difference in locale, and in the place we're growing things. And it's powerful like that.
It's the great thing we're chasing in wine, both as consumers and as producers. When you're really into wine, you're chasing this beautiful, subtle differentiation. But another note for people who are really into gardening or food, or you grow your own food, all the heirloom tomatoes, right? Or specialty seeds, right? Grapes are from seed. So Cabernet Sauvignon is a Cabernet. Cabernet Sauvignon is always a cutting, so it's always a clone. It's always a selection from the field, which means that it's the same genetic material as it goes around the world. And in fact, if you look at John, I always forget his last name. Did a great book out of California. John Concannon wrote this fantastic book about the story of how his grandfather or great grandfather imported Cabernet into California. Long story short, here's the secret. All American Cabernet, except for maybe one or two clones that have been fabricated by recently. All American Cabernet is the plant material that came from Latour or Margaux, depending on which the two vineyards his father got that year on the cuttings from France. That means all Cabernet in America is the same genetic stuff. Yes, therefore, literally it's the same plant. And therefore, all of these flavors are coming from environmental factors and human recipe.
That's wild. That's wild.
It's really,
because it's like,
really wild.
it's really wild because, it's
a little deeper, that's deeper into that story. And that is, winemakers are listening and being like, no, there's clone 24681 33, blah, blah, blah. Read the book. UC Davis in 1968 or 92 or whatever the year was when they needed to get a USDA stamp of approved plant material and secure all the things, blow things properly, and they were the home of this. They went to Concannon Vineyard, took cuttings from one vine, read the book. They took those cuttings back to their property, back to UC Davis. They grew them out, and they did 3 different heat treatment temperatures, just temperature treatments on these plant, on the exact same vines plant material. Those 3 heat treatments are clone 2, 7, and 8. So, ladies and gentlemen, like clone 8 Cabernet Sauvignon is the vast majority of American Cabernet, up to like 90%. If you got clone 2 and 7, you literally have the exact same genetic material. The only difference is there is a slightly different heat treatment in the lab, but it's the same plant. So, and that's probably generally true of Sauvignon Blanc and all the other things too. So, Pinot clones aside, that's a little bit beyond me, but it's it. Yeah, so therefore, wine is really fascinating that way. It does express itself on a site in such an amazing way. It's wild.
Is there a particular vineyard variety or like moment in the cellar that still gives you that quiet, this is why I do this feeling?
There are a lot of those, to be honest. There's a lot of those. There's those in the vineyard. When we're pruning or talking about how to redo the vineyard in the winter and dreaming up the next great wine. There's that harvest moment of like, there it is. Wow, we did everything. We did everything right. Look at this amazing fruit we're about to pick. I'm super delighted. That's always a great moment. And there's just so many every day. They can be every day at harvest. In the middle of fermentation, it can just be so incredible. There's one that's really fun that we've turned into a wine, which is the moment that I always love. And there's a video in there called The Nectar of the Gods. And in the middle of fermentation, not anything we do, particularly red wines, in the middle of fermentation, when Cabernet is half fermenting, it's warm in the tank, it's 85 degrees, and it's like 12 bricks and 8% alcohol. It just is like the greatest drink in the world. Every year I love it. And every those days I taste it and I'm like, yeah, this is such a great drink. And then I know I've got to wave it goodbye. It's like a runner running right past me. I'm like, God, you're beautiful. And then I just got to wave it goodbye because it will not be sweet and warm again. And it'll be a dry wine. But we decided that we love this stuff so much, we're going to make it. So we decided to, Barragan twins were doing this, and we make a wine that is basically a drop-dead gorgeous tank set with Barragan vinos, and we make it white, red, and rosé. And these guys are masters of this. They've been doing this for years.
That's awesome.
And this is so exciting because this wine takes me back to that moment in harvest. I love so much and disappears. It's fleeting. It's there for a few days, and I can't wait for it every year. And now we practically bottled it up. It's incredible.
That's awesome. That's awesome. How do you personally define a great wine? Not by scores, but how it makes you feel when you drink it. What to you makes a great wine?
I'm sorry, like I'm looking in my mind, what is that greatness experience? It's not just how it's hitting me as a food, how delicious it is, and how much is going on flavor-wise. And it's, as a winemaker, I clearly know when I taste something really spectacularly interesting and delicious and filled with a variety of flavors and seemingly something personal, I'm fully aware of the enormous effort of those people at that point to do everything they've done to pull that off. It is so much work to colossal great wine, put it in a bottle, and then do the other half, which is to get it around the world and sell it and get it to someone who cares.
Right? we 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 forget about that part. We're so used to all of the entire interconnectivity of our supply chain around the world, that, like, and our distribution chains, that, oh, of course I can eat a pineapple year round in California. Really? Do you know what goes into getting that to you? And, like, to think about wine's not light. It's heavy. It is a very heavy object in a bottle, and to ship it and get it places is just amazing. Had a wonderful glass of a Napa Valley Cab the other day here in Southeast Asia, and I was just like, there you go. Like, how did that get here? And I'm looking forward to finding some Washington wines, but I just am not seeing them yet. But you know what? It's time.
Yeah. Well, I just finished a phone call. I took all these notes of a phone call about how to deal with the new distribution in California. And I just, God bless to everyone who has to figure this stuff out, because to get my wine just as big
right
inside America is like, oh, lonely, but the psychological, the paperwork, and the financial effort it takes, it all has to be done after I've made the wines.
Yeah. What do you think wine can teach people about patience, time, or just paying attention to the details?
Well, that's the fun thing is, for me, when I experience wine, and I hope people can do this, for me, when I have a bottle of wine, it just I'm right back to that close in time, those memories. Like if I had the 2004, which I had with friends last night, not last night, but last week, we're just sitting there talking about, like, okay, what was I doing in 2004? Why was I doing that in 2004? Oh, I had yet to learn this lesson, but I learned these lessons, and that's why I made it that way. And there's a warm vintage, all memories for black food. I hope that for anyone who hasn't made wine, that you just think about the quality of what were you doing in that day? What were you doing with fall of that year? And then just remember, just think about the gap between the fall of that year and now, and whatever, however it unfolded. Realize that is the journey that we're sharing across time when we're doing wine. And then, if you can never experience and remember really what they want to know, and then go back to it 10 years later and realize that one of the things that winemakers try to do, and I know, for instance, French winemakers talk this way without maybe using this analogy, but one of the things that winemakers trying to do when they make a really beautiful age-worthy wine is to throw that winning Super Bowl touchdown. They're going to back up, and they're going to wait for that receiver to get all the way in the end zone, and then they're going to throw it. And so I'm waiting to throw you on a great wine in 20 years. I've got that into winemaking, and then throw this bottle out of the world, and you're going to have it 20 years later. So if you ever do that, you have an old bottle of wine, realize all of the efforts taking that winemaker to plan for that.
It's wild. It's not many other things do we have that level of time planned into the production. A musician doesn't sit there and make a song and sit there and say, all right, people in 20 years are going to be sitting down and going, yeah, that was the song. I mean, it does happen occasionally that song that was on Stranger Things.
Yeah, but the artist didn't sit down in 1972 and write this thinking about today.
Right. It's wild like that. But, I wanted to ask you this. When someone tastes one of your wines for the first time, what do you hope they walk away feeling or understanding?
I've been in the tasting room. I've seen a lot of people do it for the first time. I hope, and what makes me happy is when they feel like, wow, that's surprisingly good. Like almost confused. And that they're like, those are delicious. That's the tasting note. Like that's my favorite tasting note. Wow. Yum. Like just, those are my favorite. I don't need any, just the look on people's faces now. I actually almost don't listen to the same. I'm like, I'll hear what you're going to say. I'm going to look at your face. But your immediate facial reaction, that's what I want. And I just, that smile was like, whoa, what was that? Look,
Mm,
wait, that's, I'm like, great. We started with trip.
right. Well, which starting the trip is a great way to look at it because, as a winemaker, how has your relationship with wine changed over the years compared to when you first started making it? Is it different now?
I mean, I didn't study wine. I was an English major, rock climbing aficionado. There's a big, there's a big guy, mountain biker. I mean, I did not. I knew zip zilch about wine when I started. So for me, the reason why I wanted to work at a winery was because it was working in nature. I did not want to do any more paperwork ever. I was like, I'm in school, I'm done with no desk jobs for me. Um, and so it was either going to work for a rafting company or go work on a farm. And I worked on a farm and I made more money, so I needed to get a job. And so I went out to, because I sucked at working at restaurants. And so I went out to the wineries. I was like, hey, is there a job? And there was, lucky. And so I started working there. And uh, so I was attracted to it because it was a physical food. I was the food bowl. And then the mystery, it began. I became that first fermenter that I was mixing and watching change in the weeks. And then all the questions that led to, like, what was that? And it just led to a million questions. And every time I saw it again, I'm like, why did that happen? And okay, that's really interesting. Why? We're chasing that person. So it started with questions, and it feels like that endless, almost like an endless rabbit warren. And I'm like, I've got rabbit holes in all directions. We're still trying to chase it.
That's wow. It's interesting because there are so many varietals and styles, but are there any varietals or styles that you're really passionate about right now, and why?
Yeah, that Bordeaux white blend, I'm really, really passionate about that. Sam-Saw Muscadel dry white blend. Well, and there's another, because that blend, not only have I made it really well, and we opened up the 2004 particularly, and my friend and I, she's a wine writer on China Morning Star in Seattle, and we're both like, we're so silently stunned at how insanely fresh that wine was. And she's like, this is shocking to me, how fresh this is. She said, I remember this when it was new, but I haven't had it since. This is shockingly fresh. And I looked at her and said, I got to be honest, I'm a little dazed myself. It's staggering fresh this wine. And so, why? Why can I make a white wine that's almost 20 years with that good? What the heck was going on? I know my recipe. I've mastered my recipe even more since then. So how can I apply my recipe to this new part of the Acton Valley and also, which I think is even the better place to grow this from? So why I really do this before, but we've got an even better spot. How can I apply my recipe correct, my awareness of all the different stages of grape growing, all the different subtleties of turning grapes into juice and juice into wine, all that, and apply it to this location even better. That's wonderful experience, and then make it be so that your first impression is like, oh, that's good, right? You have a smile and you taste it. Then the journey begins where we can enjoy it 20 years.
Yes,
Most
that's
people,
awesome.
wasn't that amazing? 5 years ago, it was like fresh, it's still good. And then we can have this journey, and that's really fun to think about. Okay, recipe craft, bring all the science I can to it, and then all of the artistic response to it. And then the other grape, there's a red grape, and it is not a grape you might expect me to say. It's Sapuravi. Oh boy, was this my new favorite? Sapuravi, as anyone can search out, it goes back to data Georgia, but it probably goes back to Egypt and the Tigris-Euphrates Valley and the earliest Sumerian and pre-Sumerian. It's at least 8,000 years old in Georgia alone. It's an older Vitis vinifera grape than that. So when Xerxes was conquering Persia, he was celebrating with Safawabi. Like, it's real.
That's wild.
Yeah. So
That's wild. That's the thing that's wild to me, is that it goes back so far. Like, and you can go back so really far with this tradition. You know, you think about, there are few traditions that you can trace back maybe 100 years, but like, to think about, you know, going back thousands, wine goes back thousands of years. It's absolutely wild. You know, that can be intimidating for people. And for someone who feels intimidated by wine, what's the least scary way to start exploring it?
Looks really, folks, keep it simple. It's just the same way you pick any other food. It's like going out to the backyard and eating an apple. We are born with an appreciation for what is yummy. We know as a child of 5, mom and dad do not have to teach us which is the best fruit to eat. We pick the fruit and turn around to them and say, isn't this yummy? We know, the body knows, we know it's good. So don't let him ever tell you that you're tasting you should like more or you shouldn't like. You know. So just taste the wine and decide. And then on the other hand, like, to understand wine recipe, don't ever let anybody intimidate you. It is no different than making a cheeseburger. You're going to pick the meat, you're going to think about the flavors you want to add, and you're going to cook the meat. It's really, it's so simple. It's so simple, like wine. And I remember 8,000 years ago, we were making wine continuously, vintage after vintage, keeping the vines alive because we really love this stuff. And nobody knew nothing about germ theory, bacteria, anything. And they had no electricity. So, I mean, come on, folks. We humans know and love wine, and don't let anyone ever tell you that those wines were good back then. That they were.
Yeah. They were. It's amazing. And let me ask you this. If you were to tell someone who's just getting into wine, go out, try this. You know, you're starting out your journey. Try these 3 glasses of wine. What 3 glasses would you tell someone to go try?
Yeah, it's a great. Very long. Well, the buyers, I'd say try a Washington State Merlot for $20. These are all $20. You need all this wine balls. Try a Washington State Merlot. Try a Spanish Rioja. And try a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. You're going to get 3 parts of the world, and you're going to get 3 major different flavor differences. You're going to get inner desert in Rioja and Washington. You're going to get oceanic white.
If you could go back and, again, give yourself some winemaking advice, your younger self, what advice would you give yourself?
You pick right, man. Have a ball. Like I did. I don't feel I did anything wrong. Like, Liz was a fucking awesome trip. I just like, let's rewind. I'll do it all over again. Yeah, I don't have any place. So I just got really lucky.
Yeah, well, you know, sometimes that's the journey, though, right? It's the balancing of. It's like surfing, like you said. You know, the journey is about, you can't pick the waves, but you can choose how you're going to ride them.
Yeah, and we got to ride some incredible waves.